morning, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. So, we're going to do a slight rendition of what we were trying to do yesterday morning, but failed because my equipment was not working right. Figured out what the problem was, and we've gotten it solved now, so we should have this up this morning. Anyways, though, make sure you guys are hitting that like button and also hitting that subscribe button if you're new here, if you're seeing these videos for the first time. Also, hitting that share button is also good because this gets us out to more people that are interested in the weather or people that need to be on the lookout for significant weather. That being said, we have some significant weather ongoing here right now. Widespread air quality alerts because guess what's back? The Canadian wildfire smoke, especially over towards Ontario, Ottawa. There's multiple wildfires up north of the border here, and the wind flow had changed the other day to the south here, so a lot of these areas towards the Great Lakes have been getting slammed here with smoke. Have to watch towards the northeast maybe as well, albeit we are not seeing another Freakish Mars episode, so some good news to be had there. Some air quality alert issues towards Atlanta, but another big story is the heat. Heat is going to be something that we have to keep an extra close eye on. There's also red flag warnings in effect out west and towards southwestern Texas. Nothing surprising here, but definitely something to keep an eye out for if you are planning to burn anything, any sort of tree limbs, landscaping clippings, or etc. That being said here, let's go ahead and get into what the main part of the video will be, and this will be more so a long-range outlook. This was yesterday's outlook. There was a moderate risk here. Significant wind damage ongoing yesterday. In fact, there were even some 100-mile-per-hour gusts. There were actually at least 2 or 3 reports of that over here towards the Oklahoma-Kansas border here. Also, a significant number of hail reports, about 51. Classifies as a small severe weather outbreak pretty much. But overall, it was a pretty active day yesterday. We actually went live and covered the winds here that were going on towards Oklahoma and Kansas. It was pretty wild. But the next 3 days, we aren't seeing moderate risk, thankfully. We're just seeing slight risk. Today's slight risk is mainly going to be over towards Wisconsin and parts of Minnesota here. This is just outside of Twin Cities. This has actually been moved to the east in comparison to what we saw last night. But now we're seeing Minneapolis still in play, especially the eastern side of it. But now we're getting into La Crosse here. There is a chance for some supercells here. There is a small chance of tornadoes. But wind and hail are going to be the main threats, and they aren't looking like they have hatched risk either, so that's one plus there. Don't know if this will be anything that will make me go live at the moment, but I will be monitoring this extra closely just in case it turns into something. So nonetheless, if you happen to be over towards Minneapolis here, just to the west of Green Bay or in La Crosse, keep your head up and watch the sky. That being said, let's go to day 2. And we'll see this slight risk here over towards the Ohio Valley and parts of the Midwest here. This time we do get a small area that has a 5% tornado threat. This is over towards Peoria, Illinois, and just north of Springfield. Also a small part of Indiana is in play, and then we have a large 2% area that stretches even into Kentucky here. Indianapolis, Chicago. We're going to be watching you guys extra close. We have a marginal risk over here towards Cheyenne, Wyoming that we could watch too. And then the wind and the hail threats are big topics over there. The hail threat has actually got a hatched risk right now over towards Peoria, which is where most of the slight risk is. So we're going to be keeping an extra close eye on that over the next 24 to 36 hours actually. So that being said here, let's go ahead and take a look at day 3 because we have another slight risk. If this will load. There we go. But our slight risk does extend into a small part of the mid-Atlantic here. We also are looking at the Ohio Valley as well. This time we're shifting more so towards the western half of Kentucky, or eastern, excuse me. The eastern half of Kentucky here, West Virginia, and southern Ohio here. We could get into the action as well. Thunderstorm threat in general over the next few days is going to increase in coverage. So we got about probably 70% of the lower 48 here involved in this chance for thunderstorms. With the being warm like that, don't be like, or being warm as it is, don't be surprised to see a pulse severe storm, maybe even some hail. I mean, there's other factors that go into it, but nonetheless here, we're looking at a pretty hot next couple of weeks here. We're going to be looking at that in just a minute. We also have this marginal risk over towards Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, and even parts of Iowa and Missouri here. Let's go ahead and dive into the models now. I'm going to look into the upper levels here. Mainly looking for divergence. And usually you would see that more so on the left side of the trough here. Here's our trough right here. But we're seeing an increase on the right side, which is indicative of a ridge starting to develop here. So as we continue to go on here, it's not working now. Oh, that's why. Got it fixed. But as you can see on the right side of this trough here, we can start to get what's called a jet streak. And this jet streak is going to cause this ridge to form right here. So we could see increased activity towards the western half of the Great Lakes over the next few days. This ridge weakens and we start to kind of level off just a little bit. That is until we get past the July the 4th weekend. It could be pretty quiet to start out, but a couple of small troughs develop. Most of these are going to actually be north of the border, but as time goes on here, we do eventually see a little bit of a trough develop here, and we have to watch this for the threat of severe weather, mainly towards the 8th and the 9th. And this is actually as far as the GFS is going right now, because it's actually still loading, by the way. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that. Right now, the max we can look at is 258 hours. But still plenty of weather ahead here. New scan just came in. But again, just as quickly as we start to see the chance for that jet streak to pop up on the left side, it starts to move to the right, indicative of a pattern change. Looking more so towards a lot more of a ridge dominant setup. The last few weeks we've kind of been in more of a trough dominant setup. This will even be present into the mid to upper levels of the jet stream here. This is looking a little bit lower to the ground. This is looking at about maybe 20 to close to about 30,000 feet, I would say. And for the most part, it's a pretty similar concept here. Still have to be watchful, of course. But now we're starting to see it look a little bit more like June, but we're already in July at this point now. But nonetheless, towards the Dakotas, I could say that you guys need to watch out for some weather. Whether it will be severe or not is somewhat questionable at this point. I think there's chances for it. And then as we head into the 8th and into the 9th here, nothing really amazing at this level of the atmosphere. We may have to watch towards Texas, Oklahoma, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. So interesting stuff going on here at the mid to upper levels of the jet stream. Not going to read too far into the low level jet because mainly the most impressive threats look like they're really far out at this point. Going to shift over to another big topic that's going to be dominant, especially over the course of the next month, and that's going to be the temperatures. Oh my goodness, it's going to be hot. This is just looking into today, and you can see here around peak daytime heating hours, we're even seeing 112 over towards Wichita Falls. Triple digits even make it into Missouri here, Kansas, and then there's plenty of 90s to go around across the southeast. Coolest areas right now seem to be more so towards the Rockies, and even then there's still plenty of 70s, maybe even a few 80s. Even the 80s are getting into the northwest. Sierras are getting into the 90s, or just off the valleys of the Sierras we're getting into the 90s here. So we're starting to bake here. Some people at one point were wondering if summertime was going to happen. Well, here you go. Look no further. So as time goes on here, we're getting into Thursday, pretty similar deal. And this is really going to become the dominant thing over the next couple of weeks here. I mean, you can cool off with any showers or thunderstorms that develop here, but even then, just be ready with plenty of water. Hopefully you have your AC running to its proper capacity here. Make sure that there's plenty of Freon. And then just Try to ride this one out because it's going to be quite a heat wave that's coming on here. And I don't really think this is sparing anybody. So as we continue to go on here, this is the 4th of July, by the way. Yeah, 90s even make it into, oh my gosh, into Minnesota even. So like I said, it's going to be a hot holiday. No question about it. It's summertime, and Mother Nature is letting us know that it's summertime. But as we continue to draw forward here, we don't really see too much of a reprieve until about the 7th. The 7th, we start to cool down just slightly here. Still not quite like consoling by any means for guys like me who work outside. Help. But I would much rather deal with 80s, but the humidity is going to also be high. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and take a look at the dew points. Still probably going to have plenty of moist sectors, so the chance for storms isn't going to necessarily go away by any stretch of the imagination, but it does seem like maybe the moisture returns aren't going to be so impressive like they have been in recent time. There are areas over here towards the 4th where we start to get that corn sweat coming in from these corn crops. Video on that is coming once we can get a little bit more of a slowdown with severe weather, because corn sweat is a really interesting setup here. It's what allows more significant severe weather to exist, severe weather setups to exist across the North and South Dakota region over towards parts of western Minnesota here. So as we continue to go forward towards the southeast is where most of the moisture is going to end up being stationed here. Outside of that, not really too much changing. Haven't seen too much in the way of a dry line setup here, so the severe weather threat heading into July is going to start to wane a little bit, thankfully. But nonetheless, though, we still have to be on our guard. So I guess the last thing to look at here, last thing that we're going to be looking at here is what the radar could look like. And then we're also going to talk about the smoke situation over parts of the Midwest here. Trying to find precip type. Feels like it's been so long since I've looked at one. But it's pretty much going to verify as follows. Storm threat really is going to be more so today across the Midwest. Not major storm coverage there towards Minnesota. A couple of supercells possible. Getting to Thursday, it's going to be more so towards the Ohio Valley where the action is. Friday, could see a couple of areas of severe storms, maybe even towards the mid-Atlantic. A little bit of action towards the southeast too. Wouldn't be surprised to see a marginal risk with that. And then also, so getting into Saturday, increased activity over towards the Midwest, heading into the southeast. By the 4th, though, weather should be pretty calm. Might be a little bit of activity over towards the western high plains. I don't know if I would necessarily be worried about severe at this time. But coverage does start to increase as we go from the 5th into the 6th. By the time we get towards the 7th and 8th, coverage does seem a little bit more concentrated over towards the southern plains here, so we're going to keep an eye on that. And then towards the 10th, it's hard to say, but I'm thinking that we could see a little bit more coverage towards the Ohio Valley possibly. But that's what we have going on with the weather pattern down the line here. And then we have to also take a look at this smoke real quick. So as you can see here, we can see where the smoke is spinning. That's where our low pressure is. You can see the counterclockwise rotation here. Or actually, this is clockwise, excuse me. You can see the clockwise rotation. So this is pretty much circulating the smoke down to the south. But what ends up happening is we get some new movement. We get a little bit of a ridge developing here, and this is what's going to push that smoke out of the area. Then eventually, this is going to end up pushing offshore and kind of pushing back to the north from the looks of it. unfortunately, I can only see 48 hours into the only 48 hours into the future here. But as a whole, this should be pushing a lot of that smoke out of the Great Lakes region here. Last couple of days, it looks like you may have a little bit of issue, but it looks like there's going to be a quick end in sight, thankfully. Interestingly enough, and this is one thing to note, that smoke does actually push towards the southeast. By the way, here are the wildfires here. This is where the worst of the smoke is, so anyone that happens to be north of the border watching these videos, definitely keep an eye on this, because if you aren't dealing with the smoke now, you may still be dealing with it a little bit later down the line. Also, come to notice here that there looks like there's a couple of wildfires actually south of the border in Mexico, because I see a little bit of a concentration here of smoke, or vertically integrated smoke here in particular. So you see that moving off here. This ends up getting caught up in that in those upper level winds that we were talking about earlier, and as a whole, this ends up becoming a factor for the smoke issues that we could see over here towards the mid-Atlantic and maybe even the southeast. Really not wanting to deal with those kinds of problems here. Remember, I work outside, so we're looking at smoke near the surface. Higher concentration of that going on, but it's a pretty similar deal. The winds at the surface are pretty much going to be doing a similar thing as what we're seeing with the vertically integrated smoke. We'll start to see that dissolve just a little bit. There's a little bit higher density of that towards the surface, unfortunately, so a lot of people could be seeing some air quality alerts here in the next little bit. That being said, though, if you don't have to be outside, definitely don't. If you do have to be outside, try to keep your period of time, your amount of time outside limited. But that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new, and hit that share button. But anyways, I got to get out of here and get ready for work. This has been Tyler Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care and have a nice day. Also, stay safe.